Bonjour. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. I call the meeting to order. Madam City Clerk.
de l'ordre du jour. Il n'y a pas de changement.
There are no changes. Could I have a mover?
Without any changes.
Kingston, Conseil Butler. Donc, on the question of, is it a show of hands? Oui, donc, en faveur.
Please raise your hand, those who are in favor of the motion.
Procès-verbal du 7 juillet.
July 7th, 2025.
Bourgeois, seconded. Any questions? No? Donc, it's a show of hands again. Donc, levée de main. Merci.
Thank you.
Des conflits d'intérêts.
Are there any conflicts of interest? No.
No.
There are none.
New business, c'est affaires nouvelles. Le premier thème, c'est les trottoirs.
So the first item is Main Street Sidewalks. René Lagacé, Director Engineering, is here with us to talk about it. Good afternoon, René.
Bonjour. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Here today to talk about brick sidewalks, and specifically the brick sidewalks on Main Street will be our focus today. Next slide, please. There we go. We're specifically here today because we're noticing that a lot of sections of our brick sidewalk are at the end of their service life. It's also worth mentioning that we did quite a few renewals throughout the years, and even those renewals don't seem to last the way we think they should last. There are certain sections that we've done 2-3 years ago, and after about a winter, we started to see some premature failures, some cracking, the deterioration on the surface. It's our professional judgment that there are materials out there that are more durable and more suitable for an application for sidewalks.
René, just swipe.
Thank you. In January of this year, if you recall, we had proposed to council a new streetscape for Westmoreland, which is currently under construction. And what we had came up with is a new concept for the sidewalks that would use paver stones or brick pavers that are similar quality as the ones that are on Downing Street. And just to give you an example, so this is the concept that was approved by council back in January. And today we are here to kind of extend that concept to Main Street, using the similar color palettes, but just a different look for Main Street. And we're looking for council's approval for that street concept for sidewalk on Main Street. We're using this block as an example. This is Main Street between Mechanic and Assumption Boulevard, right in front of the Marriott Inn, Residence Inn by Marriott. This is just an overview of the concept. Basically, it has 3 colors in the color palette. And we've brought some examples here right in front of you. If you can look just in front of you, council. You'll see that the paver bricks are quite larger than the red bricks that we currently have on Main Street. They are quite thicker as well. So it's a material that's been used in similar applications. It would be a combination of 3 colors. The one in the middle, the beige, would be your main walk-in area. The gray would be an amenity strip that would be installed along the curb, as we can see here. And the brown, which is on your right-hand side, would be used as an accent color to kind of break the patterns, as you see on the picture here. And it's worth mentioning that the brown color that is on your right-hand side is the Petitcodiac River color. It's a custom-made color that was designed to match exactly the color of the Petitcodiac riverbank. So quite a special touch, uniqueness to the concept we're trying to bring here in Moncton. If I go just back on the previous slide, we think there's enough room to install some trees, which is a win for us in this particular location. We'll be looking at whenever we have these kind of extra spaces that allows for the sidewalk to go through, but also for that additional space, to be filled with tree cells. So we want to try some new technology that will help kind of the trees grow in the urban environment, which is quite challenging for trees. So a couple of examples here where we'd like to plant some trees as well, which is always a benefit for our downtown. Just another look here, as you can see, the gray again, kind of like that strip along the curb, and again, the beige would be your main walking area, with the Petit Kodiak or the Fundy Brown being your accent color. We've noticed that the section that require the most repairs, or that require renewal, would be between Lute Street and Assumption Boulevard. There are certain sections on the outskirts that were done in the previous years, which are showing some early signs of failure, but are definitely in better shape than the section that's in between Assumption and Lute Street. And this is the section that we have the most patios, definitely. So in recognition of that, if we move forward with this renewal program, we would likely target the months of September, October, November for the installation, just to kind of minimize the impact that this project could have on our patio season and also our festivals. And we do have an approved budget from our 2025 capital for $250,000 towards specifically brick sidewalk renewal on Main Street. And you'll see in future years, when we get to the capital works deliberations in the next few months, that we're proposing a budget of about $500,000 per year to kind of catch up, if you wish, on these sidewalk renewals. So really, the recommendation that is in front of you, Council, is for Council to adopt the concept that we have here for the sidewalk renewals for Main Street. Again, with a focus on the section between Lutz and Assumption Boulevard. And that concludes my presentation, and more than willing to answer any questions you may have.
Merci beaucoup, René. Conseiller Jean.
Thank you very much, René.
Donc,
J'avais une question, oui.
comment?
I do have a question. Yeah, please go ahead. We have a question here. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, René. $250,000 for how many square feet or how many square meters of renovated sidewalk? Well, what's the area that you are looking at? And this will give us an idea of how many times it needs to be repeated to complete the works on the entirety of Main Street. That's an excellent question. So the proposed section that's in front of the Marriott Hotel, it's a section of about 150 meters, and it's only one side of the street. So the estimated budget is about $250,000, as mentioned. Between Assumption and the Marriott. So this budget that's already approved, we are of the opinion that we'll be able to do that section. But for sure, adding some trees can cost a little more. So we have to take that into account. But that's our initial estimate. But when we go out to tender, we are going to get different prices. So that's why we'd like to start with a limited section, such as this one. That's fairly limited, so that we can get an idea of how much it costs. It's also a section that has no patios, no outside areas for businesses. So I think it's a good section to use as a pilot project. But then starting in the fall, we will have a pretty good idea of how much it will cost, and we'll be able to do projections for the rest of Main Street.
And then the bricks, or these better bricks, get placed on top of the concrete. And then are the curbs then granite curbs?
So appreciate the question because I did forget to mention that. But yes, there will be a concrete slab poured under the paver stones, similar to Downing, so that it prevents the settlement.
Right?
What we're expecting for the curb is that to minimize costs, if the curb is at the right elevation, we would keep the granite curb there. And that's what we expect to do with this first pilot project is that we think there's enough grading from the building towards the street. If we don't have to touch it, it's a great curb, why replace it? If we're in a situation such as Westmoreland where we're doing a full reconstruction and the curb needs to be renewed, we're recommending going back to concrete curb just because I've explained that in the past, but with granite curb, it's quite a premium and most of the granite curb is actually buried and you barely see your investment. So we do feel that concrete curb would provide better drainage for a better cost. But again, if we don't have to touch it, we would keep it that way. That would be the intent for Main Street for the section that we're looking at redoing.
Is a concrete curb easier on equipment in terms of snow clearing and so on versus granite? Because granite's almost indestructible, but versus, you know, concrete that get chipped and so on. And then it you know, for all the money you put in, it breaks the bricks and then we don't necessarily get around to fixing chips and stuff. That's why, you know, what would be nice would be to get a cost comparison. Sure. I really do. I mean, I would hope that we do this once and it's good for, what is the life expectancy of this, if I may ask?
Sure. When you look at from a manufacturing point of view, we're talking in the 50 years for these types of pavers.
Okay.
You know, like, I mean, proof is in the pudding, as they say.
Right. And so if you had 50 years on the product and then you have a granite curb, then we virtually almost can accept if a water main break or something, you know, that is uncontrollable happens, we would get 50 years out of this. And I think that's why I think it would be nice to have that comparison so we make a one-time decision.
For sure. I'd like to add that the expected service life of a concrete sidewalk or concrete curb is about the same range, about the 50 years. Definitely granite as a material is quite durable for sure, but there's definitely some challenges with putting it to the right elevation, the grading, the forming and all of that. There's some challenges there as well.
Okay, I think it would be worth comparing, but then if we did decide to go with concrete, then to have an asset management plan so that, you know what, it does get addressed over the winter, you know, something happens over the winter, there's a big chip, then that gets done, so on, so that so that they continue to look like a finished product and a welcoming product. Okay, thank you, merci.
Merci, conseiller Légère, conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you, Councillor Légère. Councillor Bourgeois, thank you very much. Your Worship, thank you, René. For me, there's no question that this section needs to be redone. For me, it's a matter of public safety. We have blind people, visually impaired people, people using wheelchairs, and I know it's a problem for them. I cannot imagine how hard it would be to walk on this sidewalk when the pavement is uneven. So maybe it's not as important as fire fighting services or policing, but I think it's a public safety matter. First question, I have 3 or 4 very short questions. Maybe I've mentioned that before, but what's the total cost and over how many years for this upgrade project? If we go out to tender, we'll have a better idea of the cost because we don't have a lot of projects that include those materials and this concept. But those discussions can be had before the next deliberations of council, so council gets a better idea of where we're going. Once we have a better idea of the concept and its cost, maybe we could go out to tender to obtain real costs. But we also received some estimated costs for the Westmoreland project. We can extrapolate and project those costs for the project at hand here. Could you at least specify how many years you think it's going to take? 3, 5? Well, there's 2 ways of looking at it. We can either opt for larger products with a large impact but that will last shorter periods of time, or we can do several little blocks, several shorter projects, but it's going to extend over a long period of time. We don't want to spend 10 years on Main Street doing that project. if you want my personal and professional opinion, I think this program should span maybe 4 years, doing one side of the street at a time to minimize the impact on traffic. That's what I was going to suggest, actually. Why don't you do the north side 1 year and then the next year the south side? Because people still have to move around. We can't expect that they're going to go around a block. You know what I mean? So, especially over a 3 to 4 year period. So our recommendation is to not start those projects before September. Even early September could be a problem for patios. So we don't really know exactly how much we can do over 1 to 3 months. So spreading it over 2 years maybe it would be a bit too aggressive a schedule. It's work that takes time. It's meticulous work, as we saw with Downing Street, takes quite a while to be done. So we think that to be realistic, 4 years, 2 years for each side could be a realistic expectation. But the pilot project that we are suggesting will give us a lot of answers in terms of costing, in terms of productivity, in terms of speed, etc. I'd like to conclude with the 3 suggestions, and then you can do whatever you want with them. I was in Summerside over the weekend, and they have the same style of paving with red bricks, and at intersections, instead of being completely square, there's a bit of a curve at the intersection, and it looks pretty good. So that's just a suggestion. Second suggestion, could we incorporate art, like 3 foot by 3 foot kind of work of art? Because that's a lot of concrete. So maybe artists would be interested in submitting projects for that, whether it could be sculptures, original creations, or maybe you could take a look at that. It would save some space, and if it's damaged, then it can be replaced. My third suggestion comes from something I saw on Facebook. It's concrete buildings that integrate, that have inflated rubber balls in it, in a grid, instead of having solid concrete. Those balls are inserted in there, and it helps the concrete be more durable. So I don't know if it works with our climate, and I think it reduces costs a lot because it makes you save a lot of concrete, and it has no structural impact on the rest of the project. So I just wanted to make that suggestion for you to consider. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Conseiller Bourgeois. Councillor Richard, thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for your presentation, René.
It's going to help a lot in the future, keeping it stable, keeping easier maybe to replace a few bricks here and there if that happens.
Mhm.
And, anyways, we're doing both sides of the street at Marriott?
No, the pilot project would be just on the Marriott side, on the
on the
south side. Yes.
Okay. And the 3 colors are nice. They look really good on
Thank
the
you.
pictures.
Yeah.
Right there too.
Mhm.
With this year's, it's going to be a challenging budget, tax rate, possible increase. What would be the difference if we would go 1 color instead of 3?
There would not be really an impact. The cost really is in the material itself and the concrete slab, which is underneath the paver stones, which is more expensive than just putting the regular brick back. However, when you look at the life cycle, that's where there's definitely comparable, or even this one is more advantageous because we know what we're seeing out there for the red brick versus what we know what to expect here, but also like Downing is a good proof. We go walk Downing, which is more than 10 years, approximately 10 years old now, and sure you have discussed from the snow clearing, obviously that will happen, but other than that, it's in very, very solid condition. So price difference in the colors, no, none really. It's the material itself that that has the difference in the cost itself.
Oh, that's great. I'm happy to hear that because the colors are great. They look really good. So
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Appreciate that.
Merci.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, René. Avant d'aller au...
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you, René. Before we move on to the vote, I really like the idea of working to integrate art. Maybe we should seek participation from the Arts Committee from the City of Moncton.
Rennie, with this, you're asking us to, says the Moncton City Council direct administration to proceed with the design and tendering of future red sidewalks. My issue is that we're asking for 250,000 a year in the budget, but we really don't know what the cost is, the overall budget. Is there no way that, so did you want to start it this year?
Yes, thank you for the question. Since we have $250,000 that was approved in the 2025 budget, we could do a phase this fall. We didn't want to, start this early. Obviously, we have a lot of construction ongoing on Main Street right now, and we didn't want to kind of interfere with that. And also, again, our approach would be here to start in September. Mid-September anyway. We don't want to rush this in the spring or in the summer. So option number one is to approve this concept and we move forward and try it out on that first block. Obviously, once we decide on a color palette, we'll want to continue it. Let's face it, it's a big decision on the aesthetics, and that's why we're here today, because it does involve the aesthetics of it. We can definitely come back to council with, as a follow-up, as an estimate of how much it would cost to do that entire section based on certain costs we received in the past. And we'll definitely have a better idea once we go out to tender, which will include only the sidewalk and the concrete slab underneath it, underneath the paver bricks. Yeah, that's an option to move forward with a pilot project, or we could wait until next spring to start this program. All the options are on the table here.
Well, when it comes to something like this, a project this big, I'm not so much for the color. I usually walk looking for it. I don't look down at my feet too much, so I'm sure there is, people like to look at. It would look better, but my concern is still, it says administration to proceed with design and tendering a future, and we still don't have a cost. Like, we're taking an estimate of, so we got a budget of $250,000, but that was for last year. As you well know, everything goes up. I mean, if they put concrete in there, they also have to put the steel in there also to, so everything has gone up. So to me, I'd sooner have some more closer, how much is going to cost. Because I think it's like Councillor Richard said, with the freeze of the assessments, property assessments, we're to go into great big projects where it's going to cost us, and this could overrun double. I'm not saying it is, but I think, is there no way that we can get a better costing, like close to what this is going to cost before we send it out or before we pass this? I'm just kind of a little like we're given a lot of, tendering, put the tender out. So if companies start filling this out and wanting to put a price in.
Perhaps I can jump in here, Councillor. So every year, Council will approve a capital budget, which will include maintenance of roads and or sidewalks on an ongoing basis. What administration is looking for is not additional monies to do the project on Main Street, but just the approval of the concept. So every year when we do get that capital budget, that includes portions of sidewalks and or roads based on need and priority, that we would use the money to do this. So we're not looking for the additional budget for a 4-year project to do Main Street. We're just saying, if council approves to this concept, it might take us a little bit longer because, again, the increase of 30% more additional cost for this. However, that as we approve projects on an ongoing basis, this would be the model, or this would be the concept, not the individual small bricks. So again, we're not seeking any additional monies. All we're trying to do is get the concept approved so that as we direct future decisions of council for fixing Main Street sidewalks, that this would be the concept that you would see. I don't know if that makes it clearer.
Well, you know, I hear what you're saying, but my issue is it still says tendering future. So how do we tender future when we don't know what the cost of this first one is? That's all I'm saying is, what, can we not get a cost, like if this first one in front of the Marigot? Like, how much is that gonna cost us, that stretch?
Mhm.
When you come back, then we have an idea for future design, future tendering, how much, so we know how, the length of that. So when you go to the next part of the sidewalk, how much it is, next part of the sidewalk, how much it is. It just seems like, you know, we're saying 250,000 we have in the budget, but we don't know that's the cost of that.
Yeah, I appreciate the concern. I guess, you know, and yes, we could definitely come up with a breakdown, an estimate of how that whole stretch would cost between Lutz and Assumption, and provide the bigger picture. But the process we're following is similar to, I guess, other tendering, where we ask for the budget for council based on previous costs, the best of our knowledge, and then we go out to tender with a cost estimate, but it's never the final cost until you close that tender, obviously. So this is somewhat of a similar approach, except I guess what's missing here is the bigger picture, the entire cost from the section between Lutz and Assumption is what I understand the concern is. But as far as the tendering process and how much cost estimate we have before going out to tender, that is really similar to all the road, water and sewer work that we're doing every year.
Merci. Elaine, did you wish to address the issue?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor and Councilor Butler. That's exactly what I wanted to say. It's similar to our other processes. So if we're within budget, then the city manager would have the approval authority. If we are over budget, then we would come to council for the award, and we would need to find other funds to compensate for the difference. So you would have the opportunity to review there.
So what you're saying is, if it goes over $250,000, you gotta come back to us.
If we don't have enough, if it's over budget.
Well, the budget's 250,000.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's correct.
all right, thank you.
Merci, conseillère Leblanc.
Oui.
Councillor Leblanc. Yes, are there any colors that we could choose from? Because beige is nice, but maybe it's gonna turn brown over time, right? Because of dirt and winters and mud and all that. So are there any other choices than those three colors that you're suggesting? Yes, there are certainly other colors that could be chosen. I'm not a color expert, so I took a bit of a step back with the process. That's why we hired the trace planning architect firm that put forward the colors that you have in front of you, taking into account the color of the Petit Cognac River and all that. But we could suggest several colors, and opinions may vary about that. So we left the experts form an opinion in terms of what would be a better match with the functionality of Main Street, the color of the existing buildings, etc. So it would be less red, in recognition of the fact that there's a lot of brick buildings on Main Street. So we wanted to have a bit of a different color. But there's certainly other colors available in the palette in the industry. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Conseiller Leblanc. No other.
We see the results.
Merci. Motion carried.
Thank you. And just to note, I'll be back for the bricks after the presentation. This is 3 trips for me, so they're quite heavy, quite durable. Okay, thank you.
C'est Madame la greffière.
Yes. Oops, yes. Next is requests from an ad hoc official language advisory committee, and I believe that the Director of Corporate Communications, Aloma Jardine, will be leading this.
Bonjour, Aloma.
Bonjour. Bon, on vient vous demander pour approuver un comité consultatif spécial sur les langues officielles. Juste pour vous donner un peu de contexte. Oh. Ah, là. On a une politique sur les langues officielles depuis 1991 à la ville de Moncton. La dernière révision était en 2018. On a aussi eu un rapport bilinguisme à Moncton qui a été déposé en 2016.
There was a report on bilingualism in Moncton that was submitted in 2016.
To help us with that work, we think that would really add some good value. Just to do those 2 things, so it would be, and that's why we're asking for an ad hoc committee. So his work would be about 8 months long to advise on the revision of the official languages policy. And to also advise on the development of an action plan to support and promote bilingualism in Moncton. Voyons. OK. L'échéancier pour ce projet-là, on aimerait si vous approuvez le...
So if you were to approve the recommendation today, we'd like to call for members in August. We would start the committee work in September of this year, and that would give us time to looking at updating the official languages policy. At the same time, we'd start looking at the report on the bilingualism, and we would start working on an action plan that would be presented to Council in April 2026, and I'm ready for your questions. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Oui, je sais. Excuse. Donc, est-ce que le conseiller bourgeois, vous voulez...
Conseiller Bourgeois, would you like to move the motion? Yes, Councillor Bourgeois, you'd like to move the recommendation? Yes, but I have some questions. Okay, great. Councillor Bourgeois, go ahead. Yeah, I need somebody to second the motion. Yes, Councillor Léger will second. Okay, good. Go ahead. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Aloma, and I'm completely in favor. I've been asking for it for 4 years, so for one reason or other, so this is great. Now, I do have 2 questions, though. If this isn't only the official languages policy, but it does, in this review, would it include commercial signage? Yes, it is a part of it. I believe it's a part of the report on bilingualism in Moncton. Is it in the policy as well? It's not included in the policy itself, but it is in the report on bilingualism. Yes, yes, exactly. So I think we have to go over and beyond just the policy if that excludes bilingual signage. And the other argument I've been putting forth for the next few years is a question of heritage. We highlight the loyalist heritage, and I agree with that 100% with Trite's House and Williams House. It's wonderful, but we would have the possibility of highlighting the Acadian heritage that was here before. They've been here for at least 4 centuries, if not 3, or at least 3. The presence of the Acadians, the presence of the Mi'kmaq as well. That's not part of the official languages, but at least if we could recognize not just the 2 official languages, but the 2 communities. A language serves to communicate, of course, but it's also the cement that holds all of the bricks of culture, heritage, performances, all of that. It means that it would be a reviewing, looking at from the layman's point of view, how is a francophone who is a minority, of course, even though equal, but they're not necessarily really equal, because there are francophones who are not able to be served in French. Now, I've never heard of an Anglophone who was never able to be served in the city of Moncton, but I do know some Francophones who were not served in French. So there's the language question, of course, but also how can we make sure that we say, hey, Moncton, the city of Moncton is truly bilingual. It's truly bicultural. I'm a Francophone. I can grow up here. I'm born at the hospital at one or the other, and I can live through my whole life here. I can die and be buried in a cemetery, or it's really from cradle to grave here in French. How do we make sure that people can truly live in French in Moncton? And then we have to determine what the role of the city of Moncton is in all of this. And it's just a suggestion. So thank you for your consideration. I do have a concern though, and I don't know who invented this, where it says in paragraph F, section F, under operational, it says the chair of the committee would be able to propose resolutions. I've never seen that elsewhere. I mean, perhaps it does exist, but move or second resolutions. Normally, the chair is neutral, is impartial, and make sure that the vote is impartial, is not biased. But if the chair proposes or seconds something, it would be a little ridiculous that they would move something, but then if there were to be a debate or a discussion that was very animated within the committee, that chair would be biased. Could you explain why you give this power to the chair of the committee? This was based on what was in the policy on agencies, councils, and committees. And of course, if you don't agree with it, we could change that. Well, it's not that I don't agree, but I just want to avoid problems. And there probably wouldn't be any, but occasionally we get surprised. We're surprised by something. And then if the mayor today say right from the start, okay, well, I agree with this policy and let's open the debate and the discussion on this. Well, she's already placing herself in a corner that might not be a comfortable one. So I'm just raising it in order to avoid that whole possibility. But I trust you. If you think it's going to work, then that's fine. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councillor Bourgeois on this one, regards to, you don't want to get into a situation when you're trying to have something passed. But one thing I don't maybe agree with is that only one member of council. Why did you just come up with one member council? Because why I'll say is that we have a number of councillors that are Acadian, and we have just 2 or 3 that are English. So it's good that both sides are represented on council at all times.
Again, we were following the ABCC policy, and it did say that if there were less than 10 members in the committee, that only one member of council would be appointed. But again, it's a policy, so we're trying to follow it. But if council would prefer that something different, we're happy to change the terms of reference.
And also too, with the 3 to 6 citizens, like, do we know it's going to be 3 or do we know?
Yeah,
6?
no, that's
Makes quite a difference.
That is a fair question. We want to make sure that there was a minimum of 3, but we didn't want to leave the door open that if we got some really great applications, we didn't want to say, well, we're only going to cut it off at 3 and not take these other 2 or 3 really great people. So it will depend a little bit on what kind of applications we get to the committee, but we did want to build in a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Merci, Conseiller Butler. There are no other questions. We do have a motion that's been moved and seconded, so we will go to electronic vote. Pardon?
So what I was asking is regards to 2 members of council instead of 1. Is that possible, or I just don't?
It would be the will of council if you want.
I'm sorry?
It would be the will of council if you want to add a member of council. It's just the politic does state that under.
I think when the policy was put together and they never thought of it in this terms, this is a very important, and I think the both both languages have to be represented?
I agree with Councillor Butler on this, and I think it would be good to have two councillors on the
We
committee.
have no problem with
Yeah.
that. We actually originally were gonna put two, but then noticed that the policy said only one, so we would have no problem with having two.
So how do we proceed?
So I don't think it really needs to change the recommendation. The recommendation is to approve the establishment of the ad hoc committee. We'll take direction that, from council stating that they would want equal representation on the committee, and we'll make sure that that occurs. But from the recommendation that's before us, it's the establishment of the ad hoc committee. So nothing needs to change from that recommendation.
Merci, Monsieur Géraud.
Can we see the results, please?
Motion carried unanimously. Merci. Madame la Greffière.
Yes, moving along, Moncton Coliseum community bookings, and I believe Shane Porter is coming down and Danielle Tracy. I was gonna say Isabel can introduce the topic. Oh, she found them. They're there. Isabel, did you want to introduce it or just go directly to Shane? Okay.
Bonjour, Shane.
Hello, good afternoon. Thanks for having us today. Sorry, I'll just jump right in. Danielle is here with us as well to help out and answer any specific questions if you have any on the rules and regulations. I guess the purpose today, although it's spelled out very well, I think here in the CRF, but the purpose is to share these new rules and regulations or guidelines, I guess, for community use of the Coliseum. And when we say community use, you know, this could be cultural events, it could be some types of sporting events. There's just some struggles that we're facing with some of this stuff. And not all of these rules that we're talking about in this document are actually new to the building. In fact, our trade clients, you know, have been working with these rules for quite a long time. These are things that we're very clear on when we sit down with people about booking the Coliseum. But, you know, because some of these rules are not being followed, we really want to be upfront, put them in writing, and really push this hard because we're running into some struggles. Just a little bit of background. Obviously, we were before council a few years ago with the repurposing plan for the Coliseum. And at that time, council approved the plan in stating that trade shows, consumer shows, those types of events were top priority of the Coliseum, obviously, but closely followed by ice users on the Coliseum side. And we also did include community events and other sporting events at the time as time is available or time is allowed. So that has always been part of the mandate. That isn't changing. We're running into some manpower issues. We're running into some financial issues with people not adhering to some rules. So we just want to be clear on that. Obviously, the community is growing, so we're getting more and more and more requests for community events and cultural events, sporting events in that facility, which is a good problem to have, but we're also getting busier and busier on the trade show side. So, you know, we don't always have the dates that people are looking for, but we try to slot people in as much and as often as possible. So just quickly, some of the issues that we're having, you know, we talk a little bit in the CRF about setup needs and things like that. A lot of these groups are coming in and they don't have the experience of doing proper floor plans. It is a little more time consuming, a little more cumbersome, but that's not the issue. It's some of the blatant disregard that I feel we need to address. One of them being food and beverage. Food and beverage is highlighted in here for a reason. We've learned through our network with trade shows in the country that, you know, there's some couple of examples of like facilities in the West Coast, for example, that had been allowing outside food and beverage, and they're going through lawsuits and litigation because of outbreaks, things like that. So we're not just trying to be mean, we're trying to actually, you know, do our due diligence to make sure that we're keeping things safe in a public facility, things like that. Also, staffing is another one that's highlighted. We've got some groups that are, staying past the agreed to times, things like that, which is causing staffing issues. We have to keep people on. We currently do not have a midnight to 8 shift at the Coliseum, but I can give you examples of events that are happening where they're not stopping at midnight. They're going to 2, 3, 4 in the morning, which means we're keeping people on all night, which affects our staffing, for the next few days, things like that. So, and I guess, I think all of you got the attachment as well, that's kind of maps out what we're trying to put in everybody's hands prior to booking. Really, the big things are food and beverage, like I mentioned, space availability. We're going based on a priority that refers to the repurposing plan. This is not new. We're asking people to put things like damage deposits or down payments down, because we're struggling sometimes after the fact when we do incur extra costs to get some of these groups to actually pay for some of those incurred costs. And then there are a few others like security. Over a certain size event, we have to really push that, even not just for the trade show promoters, but also for the community events. If you're over a certain size, you need need security personnel, you need first responders, things like that. Again, not new, but we're really wanting to push this hard. And I guess the reason for coming before council today is I'm really asking for council's support on this because, again, these aren't new, but we will get people that are pushing back a little bit. And some of the tendency is when they're told no, or they're told they have to follow something, inevitably they end up coming to certain individual counselors and trying to plead the case, if you will. So we kind of wanted to get ahead of it, present this to you, and see if you had any questions or any feedback. So I think that's it.
Merci beaucoup,
Thank you.
Shane. Conseiller Kingston.
Merci, Madame Mattes. It's for information purposes only, Shane, but really it's a great solid step forward in our 52-year-old other jewel in town, the Coliseum. I think you can eat off the floor. It's so clean in there, as the walkers know, and it's an amazing building still. I love the fact that the rentals are going to be not permitted in the ice area. As you know from previous, the tear downs were so quick and the ice would be bad the next day, on and on over the last year. So that's great that ABC can only be, will not include the ice service. And the fact that Legends becomes our sole supplier, which excellent food, they're a tremendous facility in the Coliseum, and great to see they become the sole supplier, as we know, at the Coliseum. So the tear downs and the down payments are great amendments too. And I think it's a positive step forward for our amazing Coliseum. Thank you, Shane. Merci.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Merci, Madame Mattes.
Cher Conseiller Kingston, Conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la maire. Merci, Shane, pour avoir amené ça.
Thank you. Thank you, Shane, for having presented this to us. But I'm a little confused as to our role. Do you want our support?
Where the boundary is this a council decision that we need to approve? Or is this something that staff's bailiwick and we only need to be informed?
This is for information purposes only, but I think the recognition by Shane that you will inevitably, if this gets challenged by members or users of the facility, you would get calls. So I think that when Shane says that he's looking for your support, he's hoping that council would then appreciate the guidelines that are there and would refer the users back to the administration here to explain.
But do we need to approve it?
No, you do not. It's for information purposes only.
Okay.
Thank you,
When I
Mr.
get the
CAO.
call, what do I do?
Uh,
Okay, I'm sorry, I had no hand in this. It seemed to make sense to me, and people will come up with exceptions to the rule or try to slide their project through, as you say.
Yep.
I don't like to be able to say, well, talk to Shane.
No, I know, but from a facility management, situation, it is much preferred if you can do that. And I know it's difficult to do that at the time, but for example, if somebody calls and they have an issue at the Avenir Center, when we have a management company that's in place, the first thing I do is refer them to said management company and to, the GM of the building. So, we can work out most of these things. I guess I threw that in as a little personal plug that if you could help support, that would be a really big thing because, people are going to try their hand and they're going to do it many different ways.
Yeah, but I do you want me to pass the buck?
I think on this one, I wouldn't use those words, but essentially, yeah, if you could refer them back to us, that would be helpful.
Okay. I don't have any major problem with the document. I do have two questions, though, if you don't mind answering. Could you explain in the space availability and booking section, the first paragraph, there's the third bullet says, bookings will not be made more than 1 year in advance to ensure the Coliseum schedule remains open to trade and exhibition. So could you explain a little bit why?
We do have some community groups that will try and book many years in advance. Like, for example, if they do an event and it goes well, they may say, hey, I'd like to book it for the next 5 years. In not allowing that, we're not saying that we wouldn't host them for the next 5 years, but we are saying that, you know, we need time sometimes to digest our calendar a little bit. The Coliseum is extremely busy with some of these trade events and various other types of events that are bringing outsiders into the community and spending money, which is, you know, top priority as far as the repurposing plan goes. So basically what we're saying is we're forcing that conversation to happen each year, as opposed to just doing a blanket booking for a number of years. And then we're stuck in a situation where we don't have flexibility.
Okay.
So we're not saying no, we're just saying we need to force that conversation more often.
Okay, so let's take an example of the boat show.
Yeah.
It's been here for I don't know how many years. It probably, hopefully, will be here for many more. But
Absolutely.
so the organizers of that boat show would have to every year renew their request?
No, we will do bookings for trade shows in advance.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do multi-year bookings on trade because that is the priority of the facility.
Okay, perfect. My second question was about, it doesn't appear, but I know what I'm referring to, food beverages. There will be no cooking on the premises, and outside food and beverage are not permitted on the premises. Does on the premises mean just the Coliseum, or does it also include the parking?
It also includes the parking when you're bringing food into the facility. If the event is being held inside the facility, we've had both situations in the past where people have tried to cook inside the facility, which is as Conrad could speak to, that's its own challenges. But also doing food prep under tents in a parking lot is also very challenging and something that we have to be very careful on. So we included the premises for that reason. We're really worried about them bringing outside food and beverage into the facility.
I agree, and I read that in the CRF, but why should we specify it that it's not just inside? On the premises does not mean strictly inside the Coliseum, but also includes the parking lot.
Yeah, it's the workaround that people have been trying to do with the cooking on the grounds and then bringing it into the facility. We just want to be very clear that you can't do either or. You can't be prepping food in a parking lot to then bring in. If we were saying just inside the building, that's one thing, but we've run into a number of issues with public health, with fire, with people trying to cook in the parking lot and then bring stuff in. So we're just trying to cover it all off, that's all.
Right, but my point, we're
can
saying the
change the
same
word a
thing,
bit, but yeah.
It's not clear. You said you want it to be clear. I don't think it's clear. If I was an organization wanting to rent the facility, then when you say on the premises,
Yep.
that it includes the parking lot. Maybe it's me, maybe for you, on the premises is clear that it involves the parking lot.
Sure.
But I would suggest that you had a little bullet there. Premises means both inside the Coliseum and in the parking
We
area.
can certainly do that.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Merci, Madame la Maire.
Merci, conseiller Bourgeois. Conseiller Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Shane, and I know exactly what you're talking about. So my thought would be is that because of, we're talking about this now and in the fall, and then we're looking at next spring, you know, we're within a year of new council coming on, or an election anyway. I would maybe hope that maybe sometime in the fall, you could bring this all back, you know, change it a little about the parking lot and things like that. But make it a recommendation, so it doesn't have to fall back on staff. Council has made that decision, and that's the way it's gonna be. So kind of relying on that you've got to be the bad guy, the staff all the time. Like, I mean, we're the ones that'll make that decision, shut it down and stop it. And, you know, I agree with all your points. You know, just clear up a little bit, like Daniel said about the premise, you know, because I know exactly what you're talking about, also the cooking outside and bringing it in. So I think that myself personally, I'll vote in favor today, but I would think sometimes in the fall, that before the fall, maybe you and the CIO could get together and we could come up with a plan to just shut this down, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's done, and council will take it.
No, we can certainly have that discussion, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Crossman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Shane, thanks for the presentation. Going through the document over the weekend on the rules and regulations part, I'll start there. I noticed in one of them, you say that the Coliseum closes and must be cleared by 12 p.m. I'm
Sorry,
assuming
that-
you mean 12 a.m.?
We're meeting 12 a.m., yes. We can
Okay,
tweak that.
okay.
for-
I highlighted that, just
Yep.
wanted to make sure that that change was there.
Yes, midnight.
Perfect, yeah, because it just didn't, you said everybody cleared out by 11 and then they're there till noon.
We
so-
didn't mean lunchtime.
Yeah.
Great point.
Perfect. Okay, good. Another one is alcohol is present. They need, or whoever's renting the space needs to have an alcohol permit, right? A liquor license or something along that line?
If it's going through Legends, then we are covered under an existing license, and that's obviously our preference. Now,
Okay.
there are certain examples like wine show where we do suspend our license and the show promoter brings one in, but other than that, beer festival might be another example, but other than that, that's part of the reason for the food and beverage being so important. We need that control, and we're happy to provide the service, and it's much cleaner that way.
Okay, good. Yeah, that was the reason why I brought it up. I wanted to make sure we're clear on that. And you did talk about, and Councillor Bourgeois talked about it booking more than 1 year in advance. But I mean, we're also talking, this doesn't affect youth groups that are going in and playing ice hockey. The one that really sticks out for me would be the Remembrance Day service, which we know happens every year,
Yes.
right? So I mean, this is something that, I'm assuming you use some sort of calendar system
We do.
and everything is tracked and plugged in, and then you can go from there. Would that be,
And that one is
reasonable?
one that we consider a grandfathered event.
okay,
We
good.
will never turn away the veterans. We will always do that event.
Okay, good.
So,
great.
yeah, no, there are obvious exceptions that are always in our calendar and that roll forward.
Yeah.
We're talking about, specifically some of these community or sporting events that are popping up. We're not talking about ice rentals. There's a whole process for that. So,
Exactly. Okay, good. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. That's all I have.
Merci, Councillor Crossman. Councillor Steves.
Thank you, Shane. Yeah, there must be some serious issues for you to come to us, for sure. And trying to read between the lines, Councillor Butler says he fully understands. I don't fully understand, but I'm making some assumptions. You said that there's some additional fees that apply if tear down is needed the following day. I'm just real curious, are there penalties and additional fees that have been applied for people not leaving the premises on time? You're giving us an extreme example of midnight and them staying till 3 or 4.
Yep.
It sounds ridiculous to me that that's being allowed. Can you just elaborate about that?
It's one of those things, and it hasn't just happened the one time. I know it sounds like an extreme example, but it does actually happen more often than you think. It could even be a wedding booking for as another example, when we have an agreed upon time. So we have staff scheduled according to those times, and people are having a great time, and they say, "Oh, we're not ready to leave yet." So staff that are on site, keep in mind, it's not myself on site normally. It's not Danielle as the coordinator that's on site. It's local 51 staff who are waiting to clean up. It's kitchen staff. It's things like that. And I guess we want to ensure that these rules are adhered to. So we if it takes putting large deposits in place and it takes things like that to force this issue, then we're totally prepared to do that.
So that isn't being done currently.
We've had some people that have been very kind in the past to their own detriment, and we need to stop that. That's the way I would put it. We have staff that are allowing things and just staying that extra hour,
Sure.
which turns into 2, things like that. And, it's not fair to them, and it's not fair to the taxpayer either, because ultimately, if we're charging somebody a not-for-profit rate, we're not covering costs very well at that moment. So to add all these extra charges and then not be able to collect, that's not a good option either.
Sure.
But at the same time, we've got staff that are being very sensitive. We don't want community groups to not be able to use a facility. We don't want to outlaw community use.
Yeah.
but we need those rules to be followed in order to make it work for everyone.
So there's some internal systems too that need to be worked on. Then
Absolutely, this is a
it's
part
not
of that.
100% blame on other groups for sure.
No,
It's
definitely not.
yeah.
People will try their hand and they'll try things, but it's up to us to enforce it. So I guess today what I'm asking is when we start enforcing, inevitably we will have some people that will be upset and they may call on a counselor. So we just wanted you to be aware of the situation. We're not trying to be mean. We're not trying to push community groups out of the Coliseum. We're just trying to make sure that, we're putting our best foot forward and we're capturing some of these additional costs or stopping it from happening.
We've had some practice of people being upset. So thank you.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, conseiller Steves. Conseiller Richard.
Merci, Maire Asterio.
Councillor Richard, thank you, Your Worship.
Are these in effect now?
Like I said at the beginning, most of these are not new, but the way we're presenting them might be a little new. So before you can sign a contract with us, we want people to sign off on some of these things. A lot of it was done through meetings in the past and things were verbalized, but we really need to get them in writing and get people to sign on them now so that we can kind of enforce should they not be followed.
So the copy,
So we're going to be a lot more strict, I guess, is what we're trying to say.
which is good. So the document that we have in front of us,
Will be
Will-
polished up and go into effect.
Siri wanted to put her words into. Can you elaborate on the mention of first responders and security throughout the event? Depending on the event, you've got two first.
I found this on the web.
Really? Quite sensitive. Okay, so elaborate on the mention of the first responders, security throughout the event. You're saying two first responders might not be, I'm thinking that two first responders might not be enough in certain events. So what's the number? How, how many people and at
We're
what
probably
point
going to
do you
massage
think?
that one a little bit. That one might take a little more work. For example, if it was, I'm just throwing this out there, if it was a volleyball event, we often have some of these groups coming in saying, I have a friend who can do my medical coverage, so I don't need to use your services, things like that. We're going to be a lot more strict on some of those things. A parent volunteer is not a first responder, even if they do that in their day job. So we're going to insist that people use the contracted staff that we use for all the trade events into some of these community events. And that's going to be a change for some people, but that is the safer approach for sure.
And you're not saying that they're providing this,
They're going to pay for it.
but it's not mentioned in the document,
Yeah,
right?
like I said, we will tweak this document a little bit when we put it into full use. But a lot of these things are not new. We're just going to be a lot more stringent on how it's applied.
And I'm glad you just said that again, because I would have liked to have a copy of the old one to compare to the new one, just to see the change, but no, appreciate. Merci.
Thank you.
Merci, conseiller Richard. Conseiller
Thank you, Councillor Richard. Councillor Léger, thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Richard just mentioned, it might be beneficial to have that broken out in terms of, is it by the number of participants, and then have that clearly defined, it's 2 people up to a minimum of this amount, so on.
I think that's exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to lean into some of the service providers a little bit to help us on some of those numbers.
Right, for both the first
I don't want it to be
responders and security.
overkill, but I don't want it
Right.
to be under as well. So
Yeah, I think the clearer it can be, then the less there is for discussion. 'Cause
Correct.
one could say, well, just do it this time and so on. I wanted to ask how come it mentions that we understand the no sooner than a year prior to the event, but no later than 6 months prior to the event date. If this is a new event and let's say it was 4 months prior, does that mean that they absolutely cannot go? And then
I think we would still work.
that's your gray zone.
I think we would still work with them.
Okay.
It's just, we're trying to promote that they get it in well in advance. Some of these groups, for them, it's the first time doing a floor plan. So there's a lot of massaging that has to happen,
Okay.
that we can help with because we're very familiar on staff with how the building works and how things flow and things like that. But, it's again, one of those situations where I don't want Danielle or somebody else on staff to have to be doing this 2 days before an event or even
Right.
2 weeks before an event. You know, their schedule might not allow for that. So we're trying to get it in early. We're just promoting trying to get it in early.
Okay. And I think, the more is in the document, the less there is for discussion. And I think, our role is really, as long as it's there, it's a management issue. And so, but clarity is really important because it's when it's not clear that the gray area will show up. And that's when, we'll get phone calls and so on. So-
Totally agree. And this is going to be a bit of a living document for a while. As we get into next season, we may have some other things that we may have to tweak and things like that. But I guess the point is we really don't want to put staff in these awkward situations.
And this will be available on your website so people can go look at it and they know exactly what it is that
Absolutely.
the expectation is. Okay. No, and that's great. And I think that, good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci, Conseiller Deschamps. Before I go to.
Thank you, Councillor Deschamps.
Would like to do so. If not, Conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la maire. Un once de prévention vaut une livre de remède.
Thank you. An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure.
How are we going to get ahead of the curve on this one to make sure that it's all clear? There is a change. Is it just a public service announcement? What do you think?
I mean, we can certainly talk to comms about that, but I think getting it on the website, to Councillor Legier's point, I think is step one. I think the user groups that we've been working with for the last few years on some of these things, we can directly send that to them.
I was going to suggest.
I know, for example, one of these groups in question just had a site visit, last week. So Danielle's already been prepping them for what is to come and that this will be going directly to their inbox. So the plan was to give it enough time that we can, prep people for what the changes are going to be and then push it directly to these groups and then for everybody to follow. We need them to sign on these rules before they can enter the building.
Okay, I think most groups will be repeats, but not everybody gets married every year.
Correct.
So you'll have somebody, well, my cousin got married 3 years ago and, that kind of issue. So if we can at least minimize the backlash,
Absolutely.
if any, be great. Thank you. Merci, Madame la maire.
Merci, Monsieur le Conseiller. There is no.
Thank you, Councillor Bourgeois.
The next item is the June 30th financial statements, and I believe that our CFO is going to take this.
Bonjour, Jacques.
Bonjour. All right. Thank you, members.
Good afternoon, Jacques.
Year financial statement position. Starting in June, it's normally the time where we can better start to see where we're at. Snow's done. Some of the summer projects have started or have gone out to market or so on, and we can start projecting to year end, although there's still 6 months left in the year. So on the first page of the appendix of the statement, so we have just an overview of our general fund and how it has varied month over month. If we move to the next page, show on our general fund operations as of now, we are in a surplus position of $900,000, of approximately $900,000. Our revenues are better than budget by approximately $1.2 million, and our expenses are worse than budget by approximately $280,000. On the revenue side, the things I would like to highlight a little bit. So in sustainable growth development, our building permit revenues are better than budget by $1.1 million. The main contributor to that is the DFO Science Center that was approved in January, so that we're seeing a lot of positives on that. A little bit more on the negative side. So we have our Kodiak Transpo, $415,000, worse than budget. But again, would not get too worried on that as of now. Things can turn around. There are timing issues in our budget or so on. So there could be timing issues, I mean. So I think we're still okay.
under the community services side, you will see a 583,000 better than budget. The venues, which would mostly be the Coliseum operation, 552,000 better than budget, but you will see on the expense side, there's an offset that kind of brings that to a break-even position. So for revenues, that's what I would like to highlight. On the expense side, you will see a lot of the corporate services areas, the one more office workers or so on. We see positives, whether it be governance and corporate management, corporate services, finance services, or so on. These are the areas, again, when we have vacancies, normally we will see salary slippage, and it creates positive financial results in those areas. We budget, when we do our budget, we budget for that slippage in one area. We budget it under the finance services area, under other admin. So that's why, because we don't know who will leave during the year. So our other admin is normally 600,000 worse than budget at the end of the year, just because that's where we budget our slippage for the year. On the expense side, the other things were to mention. So under the community services, again, this is where we see the offset from the venues account. So paying attention to that. And in protective services, as of now, 809,000 worse than budget. Most of that comes from fire, but there is some timing in there as well from fire. So I think we'll be okay once we get so overall. There's some ups and downs, but overall we're 902,000 better than budget as of now. As you can see on the expense side, we had 123 million budgeted. So again, it's less than 1% overall of where we're at. And we're projecting to the end of the year. And again, the projections you'll see for the general operating fund is at a 204,000 worse than budget. But if you were to ask me personally to comment, I think it would be we'd be better than that. It's just when our financial analysts and specialists go out to the departments, they say, "Oh no, we're going to spend that," or so on. But normally, sometimes it's hard to do. Even if you think you can do it by the end of the year, it doesn't necessarily occur. If we move to the next page on the utility fund, we are currently in 155,000 better than budget. Normally at this time of the year, if we look at historical trends, we're a little bit better off than that. But we've seen some water breaks and things like that. There could also be some timings, but we're not concerned, and we believe that by the end of the year, things will realign. For some of the things as well, we utilize the same workforce for the general fund and the utility fund. So when they work more on one fund, if they work more on utility, it provides savings in the operationals, which we see on the previous page. So overall, we're pretty good. And then we've also attached the purchase acquisition report. So those are the ones for the operating fund from 75,000 to 500,000, and the capital expenses from 75,000 to 5 million. We've attached those as well, and we can answer questions. We've attached the ones from April, May, and June. So that is it for my presentation, but happy to answer some questions if there are any. Thank you.
Merci, Jacques. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions?
Thank you very much, Jacques. Are there any questions? Councillor Abishara. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Jacques. Glad to have you back, and thank you for all those figures.
Air conditioning units at the Coliseum. Traveling seed tree care, we had just quotes obtained by the department. Having that note saying 3 quotes obtained by the department is just a better feel.
Yep. No, I can note that. I will speak to the purchasing team. Sometimes you can't get 3 quotes because sometimes there's not necessarily 3 vendors that would be there. I'm not saying that's the case for this one, but I will make sure that that becomes more clear in the future.
Okay, because it just says quotes obtained by the department. So just clarification on it.
Yep.
Future would be nice.
Yep.
C'est tout. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Conseiller Richard.
Well, that's it for me. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Richard, Councillor Bourgeois. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Jack, for your excellent presentation. I have a few questions to ask you. First, based on this data, can you give us an assessment of the surplus that you're protecting for the end of the year? So if council approves no extraordinary project, if there's nothing major out of the ordinary that's approved by council before the end of the year, and in the normal course of our operations, I personally think that our surplus will be in excess of $1 million. But then again, it's not under my control. You know what I mean? Yeah, we could have snowstorms in November, for example. Yes, so based on the normal course of events, we should have a bigger excess. Because there's a lot of people who go on vacation during the summer, so there's a bit of a slowdown in terms of expenses. And based on those results that we have reported on today, there's open POs, so purchases that have not necessarily been done yet, but that are expected to be done by the end of the year. So I would say at least $1 million of surplus. Okay, let's say 1.5 if we want to be dreamers. Okay, let's say we have a $1.5 million surplus at the end of the year. And there will be a freeze of the tax assessments because of the province, and they want to please taxpayers, and it's a good thing. But maybe the Moncton taxpayers will have to pay more to obtain the same level of services. So, and there will be less revenues for the city. Would we be able, but correct me if I'm wrong, I think that yes, but could we take this surplus of $1.5 million and transfer it, roll it over to next fiscal year's budget to minimize the impact of the provincial freeze? Yes, it's very possible, and it's certainly going to be one of the recommendations from the administration. Just a little caveat that needs to be considered. When we use something else than recurring revenues to pay for normal operation expenses, it can have a limited impact on the following fiscal year. But when it's $1 to $2 million out of a $235 million budget, this is acceptable. My second question, as we mentioned earlier, with the POs that have not been accounted for yet, we have a contingency fund of about $1 million, right? Yes. So you've indicated the expenditures that have been incurred. So we have $1 million that we might not spend. Could that be added to the surplus, the end of year surplus that could be applied to next year's budget? Yes, so the council contingency fund is not accounted for in this data because we take those funds, we set them aside, and then when council approves expenditures, then that's when we use this fund. So you're absolutely right. The contingency fund can be added to the surplus at the end of the year. So when you come back to us in a month or two, we'll have to factor in those two. So the potential end of year surplus and what we decide to do with the council contingency fund. So those could be used to offset the shortfall for next year. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for answering my questions. Thank you, Councillor Bourgeois, Councillor Desjardins. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Jacques.
Just curious on the, because in the past, I think the numbers have been greater, but the vandalism piece, there's about 23,000. And I'm just wondering if within that, I noticed that on St. George Street, there are a lot of the cameras that we installed that are no longer there. And the signs that are there, some of them are upside down that indicate that there used to be a camera. So what constitutes vandalism? And my second question will be maybe just highlighting the fact that it would be nice to have those cameras replaced, and how soon can that be done?
So I'll need to get back to you, but you're right. So for example, sometimes if somebody tears down a camera, it may hit another budget line that we don't necessarily put vandalism, you know what I mean? But sometimes if somebody breaks something just for the fun of breaking, so it could be certainly a coding issue. So I'll get more details on that. And the other question, I believe our chief would be in a better position to answer.
Thank you, Councilor Leger. I'll have to defer that to our IT department. I don't have an update on that.
It would be nice to have them replaced, because I know last year they were used. There was a situation where a large plate glass window was broken, and they didn't have cameras, but our camera was at that corner, and the RCMP used the film footage to be able to figure out what happened, and they were able to at least, put out a charge. So we spent a lot of time reassuring residents that we were taking this, seriously. And so I would hope that in the next few weeks, this can be done. And if it's a line item that's in IT, maybe, Jacques, we have to look at that. And like, why wouldn't that item be in public safety? So that if there's vandalism that occurs, then it's public safety that moved that item forward. It's IT that takes care of it. But I would hope that it's not IT that perhaps don't have the funding for it but anyway, if you can look into it, that would be
We'll
great.
look into it, and I don't think that's the case.
Okay, all right. But they are very useful, and people are very thankful. So I think it would be nice to, and maybe get some reassurance when all that's done, Chief, maybe somebody to come back and tell us that they're all working and that's it. I appreciate it. Other than that, I mean, yeah, it's the reality of what things are. I think that we'll see if there are any surprises. I'm a little concerned about Kodiak Transpo, though, overall, because their demands are so high on the system. And maybe at some point, it would be nice to get an update on Kodiak Transpo, where we are, what is happening with their ridership. It continues to grow. How are they challenged, and what are some of the things that that we maybe need to consider sooner than later in their budgeting process. So, merci. Thank you.
Merci, Conseiller Léger. Merci beaucoup, Jacques.
Thank you, Councillor Leger. Thank you, Jacques. Excellent work as usual. So we don't have a motion for that. Next item then. Next item on the agenda.
Pesez ton bouton.
D'abord, merci à Shelley de ramener ça.
Well, first of all, thank you, Shelley, for bringing this back. It fell through the cracks a few months ago because we missed a meeting.
So I think it's covered. I won't be long. We recently had a case that we had an organization that requested a 5-minute presentation, but was refused a 5-minute presentation because there was already 2 organizations already booked. Somehow, somewhere, somebody decided that there would be a maximum of 2 presentations, public presentations. And at the last minute, one of the 2 groups, Shelley will correct me, canceled, but the other group that had asked for a 5-minute presentation was still not informed that they could have had 5 minutes, so they came in with 2 minutes. I think there's got to be a more flexible approach to hard rules about public presentations. We'll have that discussion when we have the procedural bylaw. But I think this is the citizens forum, not to say that any group at any time can come in 15 presentations an evening. It's very rare that we'd have more than 2 or 3 anyways, but we got to be a little bit more flexible about inviting the public to attend public meetings. So I would hope that in the staff's reflection before they come to council, they consider that this is a way for some organizations and some people to contact their community, their city, civic leaders, and maybe complain, sometimes brag, very rarely, but express their concerns. So we should treat public presentations as something very important, not just, all right, come in and go out and we only accept two per. This is the city citizens forum. So please consider that when you come up with suggestions on how to improve the public presentations within the procedural bylaw. Merci, Madame la Maire.
C'est beau, c'est tout, conseiller Bourgeois.
Thank you, Your Worship. So that's it, Councillor Bourgeois. This concludes our session. Councillor Richard, motion to adjourn. Thank you very much. Enjoy your afternoon and enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.